Okay, so tonight we discuss Majjhima Nikaya 44, Cullavadella Sutta, the shorter series of questions and answers. Okay. Thus have I heard, on one occasion the Blessed One was living at Rajagaha near in the bamboo grove, the squirrel sanctuary. Then the lay follower Visakha went to the Bhikkhuni Dhammadina, that is a female monk, Buddhist nun, and after paying homage to her, he sat down at one side and asked her, "Venerable, identity is said. What is called identity by the Blessed One?" Friend Visakha, these five aggregates affected by clinging are called identity by the Blessed One. That is, the material form aggregate affected by clinging, the feeling aggregate affected by clinging, the perception aggregate affected by clinging, the formations aggregate affected by clinging, and the consciousness aggregate affected by clinging. These five aggregates affected by clinging are called identity by the Blessed One. Saying, "Good, Venerable," the lay follower Visakha delighted and rejoiced in Bhikkhuni Dhammadina's words. Then he asked her a further question. "Venerable, origin of identity is said. What is called the origin of identity by the Blessed One?" Friend Visakha, it is craving which brings renewal of being, punabbhava, rebirth, is accompanied by delight and lust, and delights in this and that is craving for sensual pleasures, craving for being, and craving for non-being. Kama tanha, bhava tanha, vibhava tanha. That means sensual pleasure, craving for sensual pleasures, kama tanha, craving for being, bhava tanha, and craving for non-being, vibhava tanha. This is called the origin of identity by the Blessed One. Venerable, cessation of identity is said. What is called the cessation of identity by the Blessed One? Friend Visakha, it is the remainderless fading away and ceasing, the giving up, relinquishing, letting go, and rejecting of that same craving. This is called the cessation of identity by the Blessed One. Venerable, the way leading to the cessation of identity is said. What is called the way leading to the cessation of identity by the Blessed One? Friend Visakha, it is just this Noble Eightfold Path, that is, right view, samma ditti, right intention, samma sankappa, right speech, samma vacha, right action, samma kammanta, right livelihood, samma ajiva, right effort, samma vayama, right mindfulness, samma sati, not sati, and right concentration, samma samadhi. Venerable, is that clinging the same as these five aggregates affected by clinging, or is the clinging something apart from the five aggregates affected by clinging? Friend Visakha, that clinging is neither the same as these five aggregates affected by clinging, nor is clinging something apart from the five aggregates affected by clinging. It is the desire and lust in regard to the five aggregates affected by clinging that is the clinging there. Venerable, how does identity view come to be? Here, friend Visakha, an untaught ordinary person who has no regard for noble ones and is unskilled and undisciplined in their Dhamma, who has no regard for true men, that is the noble men, those who are following the path, and is unskilled and undisciplined in their Dhamma. So they don't have discipline, they don't have precepts, they haven't heard what is wholesome, that is unskilled. They haven't heard 7 factors of awakening, they haven't heard sublime states, they're just busy in their mind, taking everything personally, so unskilled. But you all are not. So skilled now. You know the meaning of skilled in the word for skilled in Pali? It's Kusala. Yeah. Who has no regard for true men and is unskilled and undisciplined in their Dhamma, regards material form, the body, as self, or self as possessed of material form. Body is self. Or material form as in self, or self as in material form. He regards feeling as self, or self as possessed of feeling, Vedana, as self, or feeling as in self, or self as in feeling. Whenever you feel a painful feeling, you think it's you. You take it personally and you create a story, you push it away. You do all kinds of things that the mind tells you to do. He regards perception as self, or self as possessed of perception, or perception as in self, or self as in perception. He regards formations as self, or self as possessed of formations, or formations as in self, or self as in formations. He regards consciousness as self, or self as possessed of consciousness, or consciousness as in self, or self as in consciousness. That is how identity view comes to be. Taking everything personally, taking this is me, this I am, this is myself, which now by should be destroyed in your minds. From yesterday's teaching on 6 sets of 6, 148. Venerable, how does identity view not come to be? Here, friend Visakha, a well-taught noble disciple, that is all of you who have been learning all these teachings, well-taught. You give all your attention to these teachings. Who has regard for noble ones, and you have conviction, you have faith that this works, and is skilled and disciplined in their Dhamma. The teaching you hear, you really take it sincerely into your heart and practice. Who has regard for true men, Sappurisa, and is skilled and disciplined in their Dhamma, does not regard material form as self, or self as possessed of material form, or material form as in self, or self as in material form. He does not regard feeling as in self, or self as possessed of feeling, or feeling as in self, or self as in feeling. He does not regard perception as self, or self as possessed of perceptions, or perception as in self, or self as in perception. He does not regard formations as self, or self as possessed of formations, or formations as in self, or self as in formations. He does not regard consciousness as self, or self as possessed of consciousness, or consciousness as in self, or self as in consciousness. This is how identity view does not come to be. And then he asks, what is the Noble Eightfold Path? He knows what it is. He has heard this from the Buddha. So this is the story behind this. These two were husband and wives. And now, one day, the Buddha visited their town. Very wealthy people. They had so much wealth, but apparently no children, according to the commentary. And Visakha, not Visakha, there is a famous patron lady who was also equally wealthy and was a great supporter of the Buddha. She built Migaramatupasa, the 9-story palace to the Buddha and monks. That's Visakha, the female name. This is Visakha. And he heard that this recluse has visited town, and without telling his wife usually stays home, and he went to listen to the Buddha's teachings. And upon hearing teachings on several days, his heart freed from sensuality. He just didn't see any point in having a marital relationship. When he went home that day, his wife was waiting at the gate, at the door. They usually give a hug, how have you been? And, all that. But this day he just didn't say anything, didn't hug, kind of held his hand, like refusing to do that. So she stepped back. She anyway prepared food for him. He was quietly having that meal. At this point, she decided to break the silence and ask, have I done anything wrong? And he said, no. So what's the matter? He remained quiet. He just didn't know how to tell it. They went to bed, but she also came to this bed, and he decided to go down this bed and let her stay in the bed. And she also came down. And then he went back to the bed. and she also came. And it's like, what's the matter? Then he had to explain, my dear, I have listened to the teachings of the Supreme Enlightened One, and my heart is no longer attached to the ways that it used to behave. My heart is freed from sensual desire, and I am considering leaving you, but you can have all this wealth, all the servants, all the helpers, or if you decide to marry again, I will not be upset. And then she decided, she was very wise, she decided to ask, is it possible that I too go and listen to this teacher? Of course you can. Do they allow people like us to be ordained? Yeah. So female bhikkhunis are allowed. So she decided to just go full throttle and be ordained and live with the nuns and learn the teachings. So now he didn't have that obstacle at home, and he was an anagami, non-returner. That means his heart never went into hatred and never went into lusting. There was little bit to be done, that he's not an arahant yet. He went to see Dhammadina, this bhikkhuni, his former wife, and then engaged in this conversation. She has the title given by the Buddha as the bhikkhuni who is foremost among who can explain the Dhamma, Dhamma Katika. She can teach Dhamma so beautifully. There were many nuns who could do it, but she was the top one. So this is their conversation, and it gets interesting as we go. Now, we heard the 5 aggregates so far: form, feelings, perceptions, volitional formations, and consciousness. Someone asked the other day about mentality and materiality. Usually in materiality there is the physical body. In mentality, contact, feelings, perceptions, volition, and attention are there. Why consciousness is not there is because consciousness is an aggregate that you can put into a huge heap of stuff. But if you put consciousness into it, it would be like it's self-making. Because of this, it's just attention you give, and that becomes consciousness. That it has more in it that ultimately is produced as consciousness. And this is answered in the previous discussion, that is 43, that is the longer series of questions and answers. But that's a different discussion between Venerable Sariputta and Kottita, and I will be going to that discussion after this one. So let's bookmark that for now, and all the thinking saved for later, and we will continue this. Venerable, what is the Noble Eightfold Path? Friend Visakha, now they call him friend, she called him friend. It is just this, she's enlightened too. She quickly became enlightened, she's very wise. It is just that this Noble Eightfold Path, that is right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. Venerable, is the Noble Eightfold Path conditioned or unconditioned? Friend Visakha, the Noble Eightfold Path is conditioned. Venerable, are the 3 aggregates, this 3 here is aggregate of virtue, aggregate of concentration, aggregate of wisdom, separate from the 5 aggregates. Is usually the way the path is described, Eightfold Path or the 3 skandhas, Sila Skandha, Samadhi Skandha, Prajna Skandha. So that's what we hear. Are the 3 aggregates included by the Noble Eightfold Path, or is the Noble Eightfold Path included by the 3 aggregates? She says, the 3 aggregates are not included by the Noble Eightfold Path, friend Visakha, but the Noble Eightfold Path is included by 3 aggregates: right speech, right action, and right livelihood. These states are included in the aggregate of virtues. That means precepts. So precepts include what you speak to, and the body, bodily behavior. So kaya vachanang samodanang silang, that is the common definition for sila, precepts. The union, the calming of just both the body and the speech. So for that, right speech, right action, and right livelihood. So right livelihood here means abstaining from wrong livelihood. And there are five wrong livelihoods. Satta vanijja, Sattha vanijja, Mansa vanijja, Visa vanijja. So anyway, so it begins with selling like slavery like thing. That's wrong livelihood. Like human trafficking, this stuff, wrong livelihood. And selling poison, this is wrong livelihood. Selling weapons, wrong livelihood. And selling meat, mansa, that means becoming a hunter and doing all that, wrong livelihood. There's one more. Yeah. Selling intoxicants, yes. Yes, majja, drugs and stuff.
So poison and drugs are not in the same?
Poison here is actually like pesticides and stuff.
Oh.
Yeah, cyanide. But again, I know some of you are working in conditions where there's no option for you. Your intention is to just work there. You are not the boss. You don't have to blame yourself for doing that. I have friends who ask me, I work in an IT firm and they support hunters, and there's that. And I said you can go to extremes. Your intention is to support your family. Take the hunter's wife, for example, and free your mind from that kind of thinking. So yes, thank you, Kirsten, for that. These states are included in the aggregate of virtue: right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. These states are included in the aggregate of samadhi, concentration. I was checking how much attention you have. Right view and right intention. These states are included in the aggregate of wisdom, prajna, wisdom. Sila, that is virtue. Samadhi, that is stillness, concentration, and prajna, wisdom. The Buddha said, Panya naranang ratanang, the best jewel for men is wisdom. So in Sri Lankan schools, they have this as a motto, that they have the badge that students wear, ID badge, or just the school's logo, and in it is printed Panya naranang ratanang, usually some Buddhist phrase. So there is a section here on samadhi. Venerable, what is concentration? What is the basis of concentration? What is the equipment of concentration? What is the development of concentration? Friend Visakha, unification of mind is concentration. The four foundations of mindfulness are the basis of concentration. So what are the four foundations of mindfulness? Feelings, mind, and mental occurrences, mind objects. The four right kinds of striving are the equipment of concentration. So here, Chanda, Chitta, Virya, Vimansa. So right kind of striving, having the intention for practice, and having the mindset for practice, put in the right energy, right effort for practice, and also investigation. These are four strivings. This keeps you on the, these are well equipped. You have the right tools, as we talk about. The repetition, that's what we did yesterday. Development, continuously developing these qualities, such as the 7 factors of awakening, and cultivation of these same states the states of, four strivings and four foundations of mindfulness and collectedness of unification of mind. So all these is the development of concentration therein. Very clear answers. Now about formations. Venerable, how many formations are there? How many sankharas are there? There are these three formations, friend Visakha: the bodily formation, kaya sankhara; the verbal formation, vachi sankhara; and the mental formation, mano sankhara. But Venerable, what is the bodily formation? What is the verbal formation? What is the mental formation? So he's so kind that he asked these questions, so we have these answers for us 2500 years later. So, friend Visakha, in breathing and out breathing are the bodily formation. Applied thought and sustained thought are the verbal formation. Perception and feeling are the mental formation. So I remind you again, applied thought and sustained thought is vitakka vichara. The basic idea is to watch your mind toward wholesome intentions. Intentions of letting go, okay? Intentions of compassion, non-cruelty, intentions of loving kindness. This purifies your mind from greed, hatred and delusion. So continuously in meditation, when you are recognizing, releasing, relaxing, re-smiling and keeping the practice, you are always, it's not a quick relaxation for some of you now. You have to rest in that relaxation, like not rush through. Really, really, deeply, sincerely let go. Let go of that wanting to know every answer to every question you have. Wait until you actually graduate and do the research. In university you don't get to read all those books they recommend. You only read them after. In my case, never. It's actually, so many books I actually like to read but didn't get to. So he asked a very interesting question. But Venerable, why are in breathing and out breathing the bodily formation? Why are applied thought and sustained thought the verbal formation? Why are perception and feeling the mental formation? See, sustained thought here actually asking you to keep siksaring, sustaining that. You must have so much gratitude to Bhante for really giving it to us. So here, friend Visakha, in breathing and out breathing are bodily. Like, don't you see that? These are states bound up with the body. That is why in breathing and out breathing are the bodily formation. You hear Bhante saying like that. That is why first one applies thought and sustains thought, and subsequently one breaks out into speech. That is why applied thought and sustained thought are the verbal formation. Now you have the vitamin Q, so you don't break into speech. You go inwardly into the mind. Perception and feeling are mental. These are states bound up with the mind. That is why perception and feeling are the mental formation. In the previous discussion, they asked what is perception. So we will actually go and understand it one more time. So the cessation, attainment of cessation, nirodha. Nirodha means no bonding. Nothing holding you from the anything. Venerable, how does the attainment of the cessation of perception and feeling come to be? Friend Visakha, when a meditator is attaining the cessation of perception and feeling, it does not occur to him, I shall attain the cessation of perception and feeling, or I am attaining the cessation of perception and feeling, or I have attained the cessation of perception and feeling, but rather his mind has previously been developed in such a way that it leads him to that state. If you are thinking, that thinking keeps you from experiencing it. This is I keep repeating to many of you. Drop that thinking. Save it until after emerging from the cessation, so that you can get an expert on thinking again if you want to, or just go back in and create conditions by letting go, siksaring all the way. There's just the experience itself will teach you the Dhamma that you are trying to teach you. Okay, put it down. Venerable, when a practitioner is attaining the cessation of perception and feeling, which state sees first in him? The bodily formation, the verbal formation, or the mental formation? Isn't that very interesting? He asked that question, asking from someone who has experienced it. He asked it for us. Friend Visakha, when a practitioner is attaining the cessation of perception and feeling, first the verbal formation ceases. What is verbal formation? Thinking and applied and sustained thought, basically. That siksaring disappears. It just has no, it just effortlessly not needed actually. You are there. Then, okay. I thought I heard David or Deva. Deva. Okay. I call them 3D actually. Delson, David and Devas. Vitamin D. So I will read this part again because it's very important. Friend Visakha, when a practitioner is attaining the cessation of perception and feeling, first the verbal formation ceases. Then the bodily formation, that is in-breath and out-breath. You stop, you don't start to feel it, you don't feel it. Then the mental formation, perception and feeling, the last thing. Venerable, how does emergence from the attainment of the cessation of perception and feeling come to be? Friend Visakha, when a practitioner is emerging from the attainment of the cessation of perception and feeling, it does not occur to him, I shall emerge from the attainment of the cessation of perception and feeling, or I am emerging from the attainment of the cessation of perception and feeling, or I have emerged from the attainment of the cessation of perception and feeling, but rather his mind has previously been developed in such a way that it leads him to that state. And then he asks this good question, when a practitioner is emerging from the attainment of the cessation of perception and feeling, which states arise first in him, the bodily formation, the verbal formation, or the mental formation? Friend Visakha, when a practitioner is emerging from the attainment of the cessation of perception and feeling, first the mental formations arises. What disappeared last arises first. Then the bodily formation, that same order. Then the verbal formation, thinking and applied and sustained thought.
And saying, oh wow.
Yes, absolutely, saying, oh wow. Right. You know the tadpole experiencing something new, something never experienced before. And there's no fear here. You tap your shoulder and say, nothing to fear here. You're just so filled with gratitude for this teaching, for showing you the way, for the Buddha, as we now say, is one of the most beautiful expressions of the universe. And you all are beautiful expressions of the universe. And you discover what is inside that lotus when the lotus mind opens. How delicate, how beautiful, how fragranceful, how indescribable, how words fail in that state. Words are so limiting, which is why we tell you, don't break into talking. It kind of pulls you backward, 3 days behind. You have to now drag you up the hill again to experience quiet mind. Okay? Venerable, when a bhikkhu has emerged from the attainment of the cessation of perception and feeling, how many kinds of contact touch him? Interesting question. Friend Visakha, when a practitioner has emerged from the attainment of the cessation of perception and feeling, 3 kinds of contact touch him: voidness contact, signless contact, desireless contact. Sunyata, animitta, appanihita. Yeah. Voidness, signless, desireless. In and out. Venerable, when a bhikkhu practitioner has emerged from the attainment of the cessation of perception and feeling, to what does his mind incline? To what does it lean? To what does it tend? Friend Visakha, when a practitioner has emerged from the attainment of the cessation of perception and feeling, his mind inclines to seclusion, leans to seclusion, tends to seclusion. Okay. Venerable, how many kinds of feelings are there? How many kinds? Please answer his question. 3. Friend Visakha, there are 3 kinds of feeling: pleasant feeling, painful feeling, and neither painful nor pleasant feeling. But Venerable, what is pleasant feeling? What is painful feeling? What is neither painful nor pleasant feeling? Friend Visakha, whatever is felt bodily or mentally as pleasant and soothing is pleasant feeling. Whatever is felt bodily or mentally as painful and hurting is painful feeling. Whatever is felt bodily or mentally as neither soothing nor hurting is neither painful nor pleasant feeling. Venerable, what is pleasant and what is painful in regard to pleasant feeling? What is painful and what is pleasant in regard to painful feeling? Can you guess? What is pleasant and what is painful in regard to neither painful nor pleasant feeling? Friend Visakha, pleasant feeling is pleasant when it persists and painful when it disappears, when it changes. The Buddha says we have cried endless beginnings of a samsara. In Anamatagga Sanyutta he says, this is called endless beginnings in Sanyutta Nikaya, connected discourses. We have cried, and all that tears, if accumulated, is more than the 4 great oceans here. This is the greatness of the Buddha, to explicitly say that this is what you don't see. So, yeah. Painful feeling is painful when it persists and pleasant when it disappears. Neither painful nor pleasant feeling is pleasant when there is knowledge of it, and painful when there is no knowledge of it. So I have been telling some of you that some people, to escape what is pleasant and to escape what is painful, they chose the neutral feeling, and they went into jhanas and got forever stuck there, thinking that that is the greatest escape. They didn't know any better until a Buddha appeared in the world and told them that there is a greater escape. This differentiates Buddhism from all other teachings that were there at the time, contemporary to the Buddha. Purana Kassapa, Bhante Kusala, Pakuda Kachayana, Ajita Kesa Kambala, Sanjay Bellatiputta, Nigantanataputta, they all taught stuff. But Buddhism, the way the Buddha taught and how he studied all of them came to debate with him. But he was not shaken. His realization was unshakable. It surpassed all realizations, and it still is the greatest discovery for the mankind. Yeah. So having knowledge of neutral feeling is very important. Most of us ignore it. Most of us think that there's nothing, it's okay to be in it, or it's okay to ignore it. That ignorance, that ignoring is not good. Acknowledge it, know it, notice it, and see it. See it in every way possible. And there is nothing more to be seen after that. Katang karaniyang, what has to be done is done there. Until you get that knowledge, keep seeing it. Venerable, now talking about underlying tendencies that you heard in the 6 sets of 6 yesterday. Venerable, what underlying tendency underlies pleasant feeling? What underlying tendency underlies painful feeling? What underlying tendency underlies neither painful nor pleasant feeling? Friend Visakha, the underlying tendency to lust underlies pleasant feeling, like sleeping tendency. Right now in your minds, lust is sleeping, can wake up later after the retreat. So it's an underlying tendency. This is the danger of it. This is what those previous teachers did not see. They went in there, they kept practicing it. Whenever they are freed from those attainments, infinite consciousness or whatever, they can fall into these underlying tendencies. And some of them, the seers in India, yogis, they have had the highest attainments those days. Looked at the Narilata flower. Nari is the ladylike flower, and it started admiring how beautiful this lady looking flower is, and lust arose in their mind. They lost their ability to levitate, and they had to work hard back again. So this is how lost, people can get that far and still be lost, until someone like the great Buddha appears and tells, okay, here's the full escape for you. They even choose to never go back old ways, but that is not the greatest escape yet, though. Okay. What underlying tendency underlies neither painful nor pleasant feeling? Friend Visakha, the underlying tendency to lust underlies pleasant feeling. The underlying tendency to aversion underlies painful feeling. You can go back and smash those walls. The underlying tendency to ignorance, not knowing, underlies neither painful nor pleasant feeling. So not knowing the noble truth, not knowing the greatest escape, not knowing, final unbinding, all of it. Venerable, does the underlying tendency to lust underlie all pleasant feeling? Think of the sunset. Is it okay to enjoy the sunset? Now you know it is, right? And she answers it. Does the underlying tendency to aversion underlie all painful feeling? Does the underlying tendency to ignorance underlie all neither painful nor pleasant feeling? What a great question. Friend Visakha, the underlying tendency to lust does not underlie all pleasant feeling. The underlying tendency to aversion does not underlie all painful feeling. The underlying tendency to ignorance does not underlie all neither painful nor pleasant feeling. Venerable, what should be abandoned in regard to pleasant feeling? What should be abandoned in regard to painful feeling? What should be abandoned in regard to neither painful nor pleasant feeling? Friend Visakha, the underlying tendency to lust should be abandoned. Raga should be abandoned in regard to pleasant feeling. The underlying tendency to aversion, dvesha, dosa, should be abandoned in regard to painful feeling. The underlying tendency to ignorance, avijja, not knowing. Vijja is knowing. So when you are enlightened, you say vijja udapadi, knowing arose. Aloko udapadi, the light. You are in darkness. Now the light, there is light, arose. Panya udapadi, wisdom arose. So these are statements the Buddha made in his first sermon. Upon realizing the noble truths, all four of them completely, and developing the Eightfold Path, which is the last noble truth. The underlying tendency to aversion should be abandoned in regard to painful feeling. The underlying tendency to ignorance should be abandoned in regard to neither painful nor pleasant feeling. Venerable, does the underlying tendency to lust have to be abandoned in regard to all pleasant feeling? Does the underlying tendency to aversion have to be abandoned in regard to all painful feeling? Does the underlying tendency to ignorance have to be abandoned in regard to all neither painful nor pleasant feeling? Friend Visakha, the underlying tendency to lust does not have to be abandoned in regard to all pleasant feeling. The underlying tendency to aversion does not have to be abandoned in regard to all painful feeling. The underlying tendency to ignorance does not have to be abandoned in regard to all neither painful nor pleasant feeling. Friend Visakha, here, quite secluded from sensual pleasures, quite secluded from unwholesome states. This is hindrances that you let go on your day 1, day 2. A practitioner enters upon and abides in the first jhana, which is accompanied by applied and sustained thought, continuous exaring. With rapture and pleasure born of seclusion, with that he abandons lust, and the underlying tendency to lust does not underlie that. When you enter jhanas, you are just free from lust. You are not lusting after forms and stuff. Here, this is why jhanas are called levels of understanding, deeper levels of knowing, the way to escape. These are actually footsteps of the Buddha. Here, a practitioner considers thus: when shall I enter upon and abide in that base that the noble ones now enter upon and abide in? In one who thus generates a longing for the supreme liberations, grief arises with that longing as condition. With that he abandons aversion. See, aversion and grief, and the underlying tendency to aversion does not underlie that. So you have kind of pushing away that grief, but you abandon it. There is a kind of longing to be enlightened here. That too is abandoned. See, Delson says this all the time. Nibbana, you experience Nibbana when you least expect it. Zero expectation. Boom. Here, with the abandoning of pleasure and pain, and with the previous disappearance of joy and grief, a practitioner enters upon and abides in the fourth jhana, which has neither pain nor pleasure and purity of mindfulness due to equanimity. With that, he abandons ignorance, and the underlying tendency to ignorance does not underlie that. It's very important to attain jhanas then. Whoever says jhanas are not important haven't read this part of the sutta. He has not read. Now this gets very interesting, and we are coming to the conclusion actually. He asks about counterparts. Venerable, what is the counterpart of pleasant feeling? Friend Visakha, painful feeling is the counterpart of pleasant feeling. This is called patibhaga. What is the counterpart of painful feeling? Pleasant feeling is the counterpart of painful feeling. What is the counterpart of neither painful nor pleasant feeling? Ignorance is the counterpart of neither painful nor pleasant feeling. What is the counterpart of ignorance? True knowledge is the counterpart of ignorance. What is the counterpart of true knowledge? Deliverance is the counterpart of true knowledge. What is the counterpart of deliverance? Nibbana is the counterpart of deliverance. Venerable, what is the counterpart of Nibbana? Friend Visakha, you have pushed this line of questioning too far. You were not able to grasp the limit to this questions. Nibbana is unconditioned. It does not have a counterpart. This is why by thinking you are not getting there. Thinking is all the conditioned stuff. For the holy life, friend Visakha, holy life is called brahmacharya, celibate life with that goal of attaining perfect purification of the mind. Holy life, friend, is grounded upon Nibbana, culminates in Nibbana, ends in Nibbana. If you wish, friend Visakha, go to the Blessed One and ask him about the meaning of this. As the Blessed One explains it to you, you should remember it. How humble she is. Don't remember anything I said. Remember what the Blessed One tells you. So much faith, conviction toward the Blessed One, to the Buddha. She knows he is right through the experience. So in this case, Visakha had the path of non-returner but not the fruition yet. He would otherwise know the answer to this question. Or he has yet to experience the final unbinding, final Nibbana, to be able to completely understand where she is and why she answers questions this way. Now she is happy and he is happy. They both are not lost. Now we come to the conclusion. Then the lay follower Visakha, I am surprised that he did not become a monk yet. He was perhaps still sorting out the businesses at home or looking after his parents. Having delighted and rejoiced in Bhikkhuni Dhammadina's words. Dhammadina means given to Dhamma. You see the beauty of that name? Her life given to Dhamma. Rose from his seat, and after paying homage to her, keeping her on his right. You see, when we circumambulate the stupa, we show the right hand to the relics out of respect. This is a tradition, because left hand is used for touching dirty stuff and you don't want to show that side. in Asian culture. Basically, it's a thing. So we have huge stupas in Sri Lanka. People always walk showing the right hand to the Buddha. If anyone is walking the other direction, they are judged. That they don't know. Kids actually basically don't know, but they are taught these things from the childhood. After paying homage to, he went to the Blessed One. After paying homage to the Blessed One, he sat down at one side and told the Blessed One. Blessed means Bhagava. This is a thing, like Bhagava. They don't like to call him Gautama. He's so respectful, respect-worthy. He even told in his first sermon that don't call me friend to his 5 friends. I've gone beyond that. Treat me as Tathagata, the one who went in that direction. Thus gone one. Sugata, well gone one. So they started calling him Bhagava. All the Bhagavas, all the fortunate ones were there, but he is the Bhagava. He is fortunate not because he had a good fortune of wealth, but because he abandoned the material wealth and discovered the spiritual wealth to the fullest. He sat down at one side and told the Blessed One his entire conversation with the Bhikkhuni Dhammadina. When he finished speaking, the Blessed One told him, the Bhikkhuni Dhammadina is wise, Visakha. The Bhikkhuni Dhammadina has great wisdom. If you had asked me the meaning of this, I would have explained it to you in the same way that the Bhikkhuni Dhammadina has explained it. Such is its meaning, and so you should remember it. That is what the Blessed One said. The lay follower Visakha was satisfied and delighted in the Blessed One's words. So there is satisfaction, there is delight, but it's in the Dhamma. In the previous discussion, the greater series of questions and answers. So, who's asking questions from whom? I think Kottita asking questions from. So, Venerable Mahakottita, this is number 43 of Middle Length Discourses. Mahakottita, he is the one who was foremost among logical reasoning, Patisambhida. He was the best. There were many, but he was the best. He was given that title. In Etadagga Pali, this one is the great. That's numerical discourses. The first section has the list of these monks who were foremost among other ones with these titles. There were monks who were foremost among those who had psychic powers. It's like that. You can go read that section in Anguttara Nikaya. Anguttara, Anga Uttara. Anga is a section, and there is a greater section. Ones are in the first chapter, 2s are in the second chapter, 3s are in the third chapter. It's 9,000 of the suttas are in there, in that section. So some repetitions of all that you have heard, but this one, apparently this collection, 152 discourses of the middle length sayings, is perhaps the most famous among all the collections. So Venerable Mahakottita rose from meditation, went to the Venerable Sariputta and exchanged greetings with him. When this courteous and amiable talk was finished, he sat down at one side and said to Venerable Sariputta, so I skip most of this and ask, consciousness is said, friend. With reference to what is consciousness said? It cognizes, friend. That is why consciousness is said. What does it cognize? It cognizes pleasant, it cognizes painful, it cognizes neither painful nor pleasant, it cognizes, friend. That is why consciousness is said. Friend here means auso, like equal monks addressing each other. Usually a senior one addresses a junior monk as auso. A junior one addresses a senior one as Bhante. Now everybody addresses monks as Bhante. Okay. So there's another thing. Perception. Perception is said, friend. With reference to what is perception said? It perceives, friend. That is why perception is said. What does it perceive? It perceives blue, it perceives yellow, it perceives red, and it perceives white, and so on. It perceives, friend. That is why perception is said. This is why, when you see colors, patterns, formations, 6 are them. They are not showing anything interesting to you. They are not the goal. You can endlessly, it's like looking at your computer screen, all the pixels playing a pattern. You can stare at it forever. But it's just the busy mind. See, feeling, perception, and consciousness, friend, are these states conjoined or disjoint? And is it possible to separate each of these states from the others in order to describe the difference between them? Feeling, perception, and consciousness, friend, these states are conjoined, not disjoint. And it is impossible to separate each of these states from the others in order to describe the difference between them. For what one feels, what one perceives, that one cognizes, that is why these states are conjoined, not disjoint, and it is impossible to separate each of these states from the others in order to describe the difference between them. Okay, so they had, Sariputta and Kortita had hundreds of students listening to this conversation. They were assigned the job of teaching other monks. So it is, they know this stuff. It's actually their way of engaging in a nice conversation so that other monks get it. Friend, how many kinds of being are there? This is bhava, not bhava. Bhava is an emotion, bhava is habitual tendencies, existence, being. So Bhikkhu Bodhi has translated as just being. There are these 3 kinds of being, friend. Sense sphere being, kama bhava. Fine material being, rupa bhava. And immaterial being, arupa bhava. You can exist, you can be in all these bhavas. Friend, how is rebirth or renewal of being in the future generated? Friend, renewal of being in the future is generated through the delighting in this and that on the part of beings who are hindered by ignorance and fettered by craving. Ignorance is the last fetter that gets destroyed. Ignorance is the last out of in the 10 fetters with ego, mana, and restless mind. It tells you don't end it. Stay in the cycle, or enjoy the bliss of heavens or something. So this question again is very, very interesting, that if you are a being, if your mind is being in arupas, that's where you are headed at the death. If your mind is being in rupa, fine material jhanas, that is where you are headed. I have heard, I have not seen in the suttas, that your mind inclines to that experience, the greatest experience you have had at the time of death in terms of jhanas, and you are set in there. This is why the work you do now is super important. Even if you forget to practice after this, you are, once you have experienced the extreme winning, you are in a safe place. You are not pulled downward to any hell realm. You are not having to regret about breaking precepts, because you know you don't have that intention to break precepts. Such a secure place. The Buddha said, stream entry is the greatest victory than heaven, or becoming the universal monarch. Chakravarti king is the wheel turning monarch. It's, Sotapatti Palang Varang, the greatest is extreme winning. You can see how much suffering you have liberated your heart from, and how much you will thank the Buddha for giving this path again and again and again, compared to those beings who don't see the way out, who are stuck in many depressions, many hells in their own mental realms. It's just a way to explain that. So, ignorance. Friend, how is renewal of being in the future not generated? With the fading away of ignorance, with the arising of true knowledge, with the cessation of craving, renewal of being in the future is not generated. Now, one more thing. Friend, our vital formations, things that can be felt, okay. What does vitality stand in dependence on? Vitality stands in dependence on heat. Friend, what does heat stand in dependence on? Heat stands in dependence on vitality. Just now, friend, we understood the Venerable Sariputta to have said, vitality stands in dependence on heat. And now we understand him to say, heat stands in dependence on vitality. How should the meaning of these statements be regarded? In that case, friend, I shall give you a simile. For some wise men here understand the meaning of a statement by means of a simile. Just as when an oil lamp is burning, its radiance is seen in dependence on its flame, and its flame is seen in dependence on its radiance. So too, vitality stands in dependence on heat, and heat stands in dependence on vitality. Friend, are vital formations things that can be felt, or are vital formations one thing and things that can be felt another? Vital formations, friend, are not things that can be felt. If vital formations, this is Ayu Sanskara, lifespan, were things that can be felt, then a bhikkhu who has entered upon the cessation of perception and feeling would not be seen to emerge from it. That means your lifespan, life ends there. It's not about feelings. This is why you don't have to worry about losing your life in meditation. You come back to your life after deep meditation. Actually, there is a story of this man. His wife was preparing tea, and he decided to his mind went into meditation. She was waiting with the tea and he wasn't coming out. Emergency doctors were called and paramedics took him to the hospital, and he was declared dead. But fortunately, this Indian doctor said, wait a minute, what was he doing before this happened? She said, he usually meditates. He was meditating. Or he just came out from a retreat and he likes to meditate. And so the doctor said, don't send him to the morgue. Don't do any operation on him. Let him wait. Let him stay. So he came out of the meditation, and he asked, why am I in the hospital? Actually, wildfires can happen, but they do not harm you because of the power of this meditation. Huge floods can happen and they go over you, but nothing harms you. It's the power of this meditation. Bhante used to speak about these things. So so he came out of the meditation and his wife said, never do that again. So because vital formations are one thing and things that can be felt another, a bhikkhu, a practitioner who has entered upon the cessation of perception and feeling, can be seen to emerge from it. Friend, when the body is bereft of how many states, is it then discarded and forsaken, left lying senseless like a log? This is about the death. Nirattangva kalingarang. Kalingara is a useless log that even you can't use that log for making fire. That is how useless the body is. Friend, when this body is bereft of three states, vitality, heat and consciousness, it is then discarded and forsaken, left lying